Steve Harvey's phone rang at 2:17 in the afternoon on a Thursday in November, during a commercial break in the middle of a Family Feud taping in Atlanta. And everyone on set could tell from the way he looked at the screen that it was the kind of call he had been dreading for years. He answered it without leaving the stage. He stood there, at the podium, with the audience of 300 people 2 feet away and every camera still hot. And he listened for 40 seconds without saying a word. Then he lowered the phone. His shoulders moved in a way that had nothing to do with the man who had been making 300 people laugh 60 seconds earlier. His producer, standing in the wings, said she had worked with Steve Harvey for 11 years, and in those 40 seconds she saw something she had never seen on that stage. She saw him forget where he was. And then he turned around, faced the audience, and did something nobody in the 40-year history of that show had ever done. He told them exactly what the phone call was. It was a standard taping day. The Dawson family from Memphis had just played a strong fast money round, and the studio energy was high. The kind of sustained warmth that builds over a good episode, where the contestants are likable and the answers are funny, and Steve is in the particular groove that makes the show feel effortless from the outside. The competing family, the Coopers from Jacksonville, had been generous with their laughter and quick with their responses, and the audience had been engaged since the opening. Steve was mid-walk to the podium when the break started. His phone was in his left jacket pocket, where it always was during tapings, on silent, face down, reserved for emergencies that the production team knew not to interrupt unless it was the category of news that cannot wait. The call that came through was from his oldest son. What he heard in those 40 seconds was this. His mother, Eloise Harvey, 81 years old, had collapsed at her home in Cleveland, Ohio. She was being transported by ambulance to the hospital. His son didn't yet know the cause. He didn't yet know her status. He knew she had been unresponsive when the paramedics arrived. He knew it had happened fast. He called Steve because Steve had made all of his children promise any news about his mother came to him first, no matter when, no matter where. Steve lowered the phone. He stood at the podium with his back to the audience for a moment that nobody on set later agreed on the length of. The floor managers said it was 12 seconds. The audio engineer said it was closer to 25. Long enough that his producer began to move from the wings. Long enough that the audience, which had been chattering through the break, went quiet without being told to. Steve turned around. He looked at the audience. He looked at the Dawson family at one podium and the Cooper family at the other. He looked at the cameras. And then he told them. "I just got a call about my mother," he said. His voice was not broken. It was very steady, in the way that voices go very steady when a person is exercising a great deal of control. She collapsed. She's on her way to the hospital. I don't know her status yet. The studio fell completely silent. Not the game show pause, a real silence. 300 people stopped breathing at the same moment. "I'm not going to leave," Steve said. "I'm going to stay here. Because I need to be somewhere that isn't inside my own head for the next few minutes, while I wait to know something. And this is where I am. So I'm staying." He looked at the Dawson family. "I'm sorry," he said. "This is your day, and I'm still going to make sure it's your day." Then he did something that nobody expected. He sat down on the stage, not at the podium, on the stage floor, in his suit, in front of everyone, and he said, Can someone just talk to me for a minute?" Patricia Dawson, the mother of the Memphis family, stepped off her platform without hesitating. She sat down on the stage across from Steve Harvey. She looked at him with the particular calm of a woman who has sat with people in difficulty before and knows that presence matters more than words. She said, "Tell me about her." Steve looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "She is the funniest woman I have ever met in my life. She is also the most stubborn. She once argued with a doctor for 45 minutes that she didn't need reading glasses, and then put them on and read the exit sign from across the room and said, 'Well, I could see it before too.' She raised me in a house in Cleveland on nothing. She ironed my shirts for job interviews when we couldn't afford to buy food. She never once told me this was going to be okay, because she didn't make promises she didn't know she could keep. She just kept ironing." Patricia Dawson said, "She sounds like my mama." Steve said, "They probably know each other." The audience laughed, a gentle, warm sound that wasn't the game show laugh. It was the laugh of 300 people releasing tension together, choosing warmth over awkwardness. "Let me tell you something about my mother," Steve continued, still on the floor of the stage, still in his suit, the microphone in his hand because he hadn't put it down. "I was in my car for 3 years, living out of a Ford Tempo, showering in gas station bathrooms. I did not call my mother for 14 months because I was too ashamed to tell her where I was, and she found me. I don't know how. I think she called every comedy club in every city I had ever mentioned until someone recognized my name. She showed up at a parking lot in Cleveland on a Tuesday night, knocked on my car window, handed me a paper bag with a sandwich and a thermos of coffee, and said, 'I'm not staying. I just needed to know you were eating.' And she left." The room held its breath. "She never asked me to explain," Steve said. "She never asked why I hadn't called. She just needed to know I was eating." His phone buzzed. He looked at it. He read the text. He read it twice. He looked up. "She's stable," he said. 300 people exhaled at the same moment. The sound of it was audible on the recording. Steve pressed his lips together. His eyes were closed for a second. When he opened them, Patricia Dawson was still sitting across from him on the stage, and he looked at her and said, "Thank you." He stood up. He straightened his jacket. He picked up his cue cards. "We're going to finish this episode," he said, "because my mother raised me to finish what I start. And she is stable, and she would be furious if she found out I shut down a taping." The Dawson family broke into applause first. The Cooper family joined immediately. The audience followed, and the sound was not the usual game show applause. It was the kind of sound that only happens when 300 people have just been through something together and are relieved and grateful to be on the other side of it. Steve Harvey finished the episode. He flew to Cleveland that night. When the episode aired 4 weeks later, an edited version that included the call and everything that followed, it was seen by 112 million people in 48 hours. Every network news program covered it. The hashtag #FinishWhatYouStart was trending in 28 countries. Steve Harvey's publicist received over 6,000 messages from viewers who had received similar calls, at work, at school, in public places, and who said the clip had made them feel less alone in the particular vertigo of that kind of news. Eloise Harvey had suffered a mild cardiac episode triggered by a rapid drop in blood pressure related to a medication interaction. She spent 6 days in the hospital. She was discharged on a Sunday, and, according to Steve Harvey's account in a later interview, her first request upon returning home was for a bowl of soup and for someone to turn down the television because it was too loud. 3 months after the taping, Steve announced the creation of the Eloise Harvey Caregiver Support Fund, named for his mother, designed to provide financial relief and in-home assistance to elderly individuals living alone whose primary caregivers are long distance. He said the fund existed because the worst part of the call was not the call itself. It was the knowledge that he was 1,000 miles away and had not known. A year after the taping, Patricia Dawson sent Steve a letter. She said she didn't know what made her stand up and walk onto the stage that day. She said she just knew someone needed someone to sit with them. She said her mother had taught her that. 5 years later, Steve Harvey has spoken publicly about his mother more frequently than he ever had before the call. He says the episode changed something in him, not the fear, which he had always had, but the hiding of the fear. He says he had spent his career presenting the version of himself that had come through the difficult things, and that afternoon he was the version of himself in the middle of a difficult thing, and 300 strangers chose to sit with him in it. Today, Eloise Harvey is 86 years old. She has watched the episode clip once. Steve says she told him his hair looked too short. There is a kind of courage that nobody prepares you for. The courage of being in the middle of something frightening in a public place and not pretending. The courage of sitting on a stage floor in a good suit and saying, "I am a person in a hard moment, and I need someone to talk to me." Steve Harvey did not plan that moment. He could not have. But when it arrived, he let it be what it was. And a woman he had never met sat down across from him on a stage floor and said, "Tell me about her." And he did. And it was enough. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that vulnerability in a hard moment is not weakness, but an invitation for connection, subscribe to this channel and hit that thumbs up. Share this with someone who needs to know they don't have to pretend to be fine when they aren't. Have you ever received a call that changed a day you thought you had figured out? Let us know in the comments and ring that notification bell for more moments that restore your faith in humanity.